everybody, it is Steve, your friendly neighborhood law gnome, and welcome to another DC Animated Live show. I really hope that you are excited because we are about to wrap up another strong year of DC animated content. It definitely has been a very interesting one because, like I've said in the previous episode, this was a show that was on my original channel, and this is where it was a project that started with my friend Brian, and then Cammie took the torch, and now we sort of can say that we are caught up, if you will, in regards to the timeline of all the releases. So we're definitely going to have to get creative over here in 2022. And believe me, we have a lot of really good ideas in the works. And of course, if you are watching on a Wednesday, happy new comic book day. But anyway, Cammie, I am very excited to have you back again. I don't know how I can possibly figure out how we contain all of this craziness, because every single time we have this show start, we always have an amazing conversation.
Oh, this is hands down my favorite thing to do. This is my favorite gathering with you. I love talking about these animated shows because it honestly is a way to appreciate these films with someone who is appreciating them miles and miles away from me. And it's like, you know, I always say, I wish you were here so we could enjoy these films together, because these are the great moments that you, as an adult, want to find that adult friend that still enjoys the same things that you enjoy. So it's really cool that we can do this long distance. I love it.
And we always still manage to find something new, because right now, in regards to the world of DC animation, there's so many things happening right now. We've got everything from the 4th season of Young Justice that is now officially premiering on HBO Max, and every Thursday is a fun day for me because I'm always excited for the next episode. I'm very excited for the 3rd season of Harley Quinn. That's going to be airing, and I'm very excited to say, because this is going to play into one of the movies that we're going to be talking about today, I finally started watching the 2003 Teen Titans show. So I am so excited to have another little piece of DC lore in my head and in my heart. So today we're going to be closing out 2021 by going over some DC original animated movies. Just in case you are new to this little segment here, thank you very much. We really hope that you enjoy it. And don't forget to leave us a like and a comment. And if you want to see all the other stuff that's happening over here on this channel, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and hit that notification bell so you're up to date with all of our latest content. So there's 2 DC animated libraries. There's the DC Universe films and the DC Original Movies films. The DC Original Movies films are very interesting things that take place in regards to things like adapting from a TV show or looking into the CW DC universe, and also just a couple of interesting little things peppered in there. And we definitely have an interesting one that is peppered in this little group. So we're going to start off, and it's going to be a very interesting thing because we're going to go from very dark to very light to very dark again. I'm really curious to see how this is going to flow. So we're going to start off with a very interesting mini-series that becomes its own feature film. This was all on the CW Seed. That is where we were able to talk about stuff like Vixen the movie, Freedom Fighters the Ray, and one of Cammie's personal favorites, Constantine City of Demons. But today we're taking a look at Deathstroke, Knights and Dragons, starring the voice of Michael Chiklis as Slade Wilson, aka Deathstroke. So I have to be honest with you, I don't believe that this specific take on Deathstroke is based on anything that we have had from CW. I know that Deathstroke did make an appearance in the show Arrow, but I don't think that this is the same Deathstroke. And what's so funny is we're in a time when it comes to DC and Marvel and all the other comic companies where people really are the big fan of the anti-hero. I never actually considered Deathstroke to be an anti-hero. To me, he was always a villain, but this was a very interesting way to look at Deathstroke as an anti-hero because he is a fan favorite amongst many. I had only heard about him briefly when I was a young kid, but now he is a real fan favorite. He just got his own series of comics called Deathstroke Inc. that is written by Josh Williamson. I'm not reading it right now, but a lot of people seem to be big fans. There was a possibility that there was going to be a DC Extended Universe film that was going to be directed by Ben Affleck, also him going back into the Batsuit, and Joe Manganiello was going to be Deathstroke. And we got a little tease of him in Deathstroke at the end of Justice League, but I'm rambling. Cammie, what were your overall thoughts about this movie, especially when you started watching it? Because this is a hardcore R.
Oh my gosh, yes, hardcore R. You are not even kidding. I mean, just from the jump, that scene in the bedroom, I'm like, whoa, okay, I know where we're going with this movie then. It's going to be intense. There was some good fight scenes, though. I will definitely give it to that rated R stamp that I just really enjoyed the swordsmanship that Deathstroke produced in this film. But in terms of that face, all I could see the whole time I'm watching this film, I guess too, maybe it was like the way his beard and his mustache and haircut were, but I could just see Joe Manganiello. And it's probably because of the fact that it left us, you know, with the Snyder cut, that was fresh in my mind. But that certainly helped me get through this film and just, I think, really just absorb it and enjoy it a lot more. I'm not hugely diverse when it comes to any kind of introduction or worlds or comic books concerning Deathstroke. He's a very new character to me, but this was an exciting film and very much rated R.
Yeah, I mean, I think what was very interesting to me is that, again, I knew who Deathstroke was by name, but I really didn't read any titles that he was in. And I think it's just because of the fact that in the mid-90s, when I was starting to read comic books and really get into them, I don't think he was a prominent character in the stories. I think what really got Deathstroke back into the limelight was, believe it or not, him being in the 2003 Teen Titans cartoon. He was Robin's arch rival. And the fact that he was a very dark character in a very somewhat lighthearted show was a very interesting thing to see. I also really personally need to look into the character bio myself, because as far as I knew in regards to him, I don't recall him actually having any powers. In this movie, he has Wolverine's powers, healing factors, but also very similarly, you know, given to him through a secret government experiment. But I think what was very interesting about this story was we really got to see the vigilante slash anti-hero slash killer side of Deathstroke, but we also see a real human family-oriented story about Deathstroke. We see the past that he had with his wife. We see the fact that he actually did have children. I mean, I actually knew about Rose. Rose is a character that also is starting to show up in the comic books a lot more often. And also his son is a character that we are seeing in the comics as well. But I also have to say what I thought was very interesting about this show, about this movie, was the fact that we see Deathstroke being who he is, but we see him succeed, but we also see him fail. And one of the predominant points in this movie where we see him fail is what happens to his son.
Yeah, and that's always kind of the Achilles heel of any superhero, supervillain, is when you have a family tie-in. And I thought that really helped push the plot of this movie along, because you not only get that anti-villain, but you get the family dynamic. And that kind of serves the best of both worlds, because you both love and hate the person at the same time. You see their dark side, but yet you're kind of, in a way, rooting for them, no matter how dismal that light might be, because they do have, you know, an offspring on the other side. I think bringing in his daughter was a fantastic element to this, because again, it kind of gave a way to kind of a connection with his son in a different way. It also gave life to his son again. I think that with that initial kidnapping, when his throat got slit for the first time, I think he kind of lost his way a little bit. You know, he lost faith in his father. He kind of lost that imagery that he had of that perfect childhood. Because when we start the film, you really see a very happy, well-adjusted child. And then as you go through the film, I mean, obviously you're dealing with adolescents and the teenage years and so forth, but you just see a very withdrawn child. But then you bring Rose into the mix and it's like, oh, okay, cool. It's giving him purpose. It's giving him understanding again. And it's giving him that sibling camaraderie that he didn't have. I thought that his mother was a very strong character. And I don't know, I really enjoyed kind of the unfolding. And I think the beauty and the writing style of this particular film was the fact that you kind of get a little bit of a backstory on Deathstroke. So even if you're not totally familiar with his character, as you know, we stated, you know, in the beginning that we're both kind of not completely immersed in his whole backstory. I think there's a lot for you to still be able to enjoy that film with not having to know every little detail about him.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think another one of the real strong points is what's really funny is when it comes to Deathstroke, he's also actually one of Batman's rogues gallery. He's one that is not as most commonly used as, let's say, a Joker or a Penguin. And yes, I'm going to say it, a Riddler, for crying out loud, a Riddler. And in case you all don't understand that outburst, you'll have to watch another video that just recently came out over here on this channel. You'll understand it right there and then. But there's very Batmanish vibes. Like, he has his Alfred in the form of Wintergreen. He has his Bat family in terms of his wife, and eventually Joseph and Rose would join his side, because at the beginning, Rose is his enemy because of a very interesting thing in his past, which I also really appreciated, because you had to pay attention in that very beginning of that movie. Otherwise, you weren't going to understand Rose's role in this whole thing. I loved that so, so much. Now, I want to ask you a very interesting question. It's a perfect opportunity to do so. So we watched a movie very recently called Batman Soul of the Dragon, and that was where you were introduced to characters named Lady Shiva and Bronze Tiger. How did you think about them in this movie compared to what they were like in Soul of the Dragon? Because you saw that other side of them actually being those true villains / mercenaries in this film.
Yeah, again, a totally different perception of them. I think that, you know, looking back, I told you Soul of the Dragon wasn't exactly one of my favorite films, but I definitely enjoyed their characters more there than I did here. I thought they were a lot more laid back, but it worked for this story, because if you think about it, you're kind of doing that flip of the coin, if you will. You know, you're getting the good side of him. I mean, if we want to call it cheating on your spouse and fathering offspring, you know, a good side to someone, but it humanizes him quite a bit. And to have these characters that kind of come into play that you're familiar with in other storylines and see them, it was a lighthearted, I mean, that's probably not the best term to use, but in comparison to Soul of the Dragon, where there were very refined characters, here I think that the idea was to kind of get that messy side of a character and get a refined side. So you're getting kind of the best of both worlds.
Yeah, and that's what's so great about something like Soul of the Dragon, because it's an Elseworlds kind of story. That's exactly what it is. People who know characters like Bronze Tiger and Lady Shiva, they know that Bronze Tiger is the ruthless, take-no-prisoners mercenary who's going to get down in the mud with you in a fist fight. We know that Lady Shiva is the woman of few words, but a woman of action. She's a cold-blooded killer. And like I said in the previous video that we did over here on the DC Animated Live Show, when you take a look at her in Young Justice, you also see a little bit more of a talkative character, but still a cold-blooded killer. And I just really appreciated their roles in this specific movie, because Hive is also an entity that's very rich in the DC lore. I was a little bit surprised that Hive was a group that was used in this specific film, because again, when I think of Hive, I think of Teen Titans. That's normally where we would see them. I mean, we didn't technically see them in the Judas Contract, when that was a movie that we reviewed a long time ago, and we'll definitely revisit that soon. But there was another like Hive kind of vibe there. Hive is also entity that has shown up in Young Justice, but they seem to really be more so when it comes to the younger superheroes as opposed to the older superheroes. So I was curious about your thoughts in regards to Hyde and also the Jackal. That's another character. I believe the Jackal is a real character. Again, definitely connected to Deathstroke, but again, not a character that I know personally so well.
Well, again, for me, this film was a lot of new, and so the Hive was definitely a new element, you know, not really having been immersed in a lot of those storylines and knowing a lot of the history on that. To me, it worked because it gave it kind of a dark element. It gave it a plot point to kind of push through. It was almost as if that was the focal point for Deathstroke. You know, he had his counterpart, if you will, his main focal point on the human side of him, if you will, was his family, and then you had this drive with the Hive. So for me, in terms of comparison, I really don't have a lot to compare it to. I'm still a newbie in that regard, but for me, I thought it was a very strong plot point for the drive in this particular film.
Yeah, I mean, I think if there's anything that I can really say about this film is it's not one of the few that I reference a lot, but I think that it's one of the most complete packages that DC animation has to offer. It's got a perfect balance of everything. It's got a perfect balance of action and drama. It's got a perfect balance. Like, it knew when to throw the comedy in, and it knew when to keep it serious. I really appreciated the rich character development that you get. And it's so interesting because, we take a look at the fact that we just watched Batman The Long Halloween Parts 1 and 2, and we reviewed it along with its source material. The fact that this was a one Blu-ray/DVD disc, and yet they managed to give you such an in-depth story that builds the characters, builds the worlds, builds the relationships, and it couldn't even be done so well in two films like The Long Halloween. I find that so interesting. Maybe it's just the fact that this was, because I always say when it comes to television shows, it's the reason why a lot of esteemed actors right now are gearing themselves more towards television right now than they are towards films, because television gives you that time to develop these worlds and develop these characters. And these were just little segments on a website that you would watch in episode increments, and they just combined it into one solid film. So I think that's the reason why we feel this way about a movie like Deathstroke Knights and Dragons, because they had that time frame to actually play with those characters. Because I mean, like, when we look back at some of those other films that we see that are based on these little episodes on CW Seed, like Constantine and Vixen and Freedom Fighters The Ray, you feel a more complete story because they are just little animated episodes broken up before they're combined into one.
And I think that's a big, strong point to make when it comes to DC animation, is that I find that sometimes we almost feel let down in a way when you have a DC animated film that's based off of a comic series versus one that is essentially just created from thoughts of characters. Or what if we took this character and kind of placed it in this world or an else world, or whatever the case may be, and they create this this whole plot, this whole story about that particular character, versus when you have read a series and then you come into it with maybe sometimes too high of expectations. Here, not knowing anything about Deathstroke, knowing nothing of his family, I very much enjoyed kind of not only getting to know these characters, but watching their development. We get a young Joseph, we get a young Rose, but then we also see them age. We see, even an age progression with Deathstroke and his wife and their dynamic. And I thought the writing was very well executed in this film, very believable. And I think that's a big, strong contention as to why Constantine really stuck out with me, because you had the right amount of gore. It really struck with the R rating, but you had these these believable, tangible characters that just really work well together.
Yeah, that's another thing that I will definitely say about movies like Constantine and Deathstroke, because when they see that you have that R rating, oh, believe me, they let you know that these movies are R-rated films. And again, that's why I just love that DC Animation has gone in this direction since 2007, really trying to make sure that audiences know that, yes, these are characters that you knew as kids. These are characters that you saw on TV as a kid. But when you see that PG or that R rating, don't anticipate something that is G or PG. You're gonna get that in your face action. You're gonna get the blood splatter. You're gonna get the cursing. You're going to get the reason why this movie is rated what it is. The only thing that I would personally say that is negative about this film, because if I'm going to rate this film, I'm going to give it a 3.5 out of 4, only because of the fact that if I'm going to rewatch a movie in regards to the entirety of the library, it's not going to be the movie that I go to first. There are plenty of other DC animated movies that I would want to watch before I rewatch Deathstroke Knights and Dragons. Again, it's a good movie, very, very solid, but maybe, you know, my mind will change. But my attitude is it's definitely something worth watching, but it may in fact be one of those movies that just goes by the wayside and you don't even realize, you know? Maybe it's just because of the character.
Well, and too, a movie such as this, I mean, it was worth the watch, but it doesn't really leave you pining for an anticipation of either a rewatch or a continuation. You know, like we got it all. We got a good story. We saw a good dynamic. We had some good writing. We had some great action, but it's not like that feel good. I want to watch this again next month, or this is one I can see myself watching every 6 months. You know, I think there are certain DC movies like that that just kind of sit on your shelf and call your name, and you're like, oh, this is a good one. I want to, you know, go back and revisit this. Another point of contention that I have for this movie is I really felt like there was a lame appeal to the title. They really honed in on the importance of Knights and Dragons. Obviously, it was a story that was read to Joseph as a child, so it was kind of the connection, I guess, the thing that tied it all together. But to me, it was just a lame approach at a title, because you're kind of going in with these different expectations, like Knights and Dragons. So you're thinking this epic medieval kind of thing, and you don't get that. And so your mind the whole time is going, okay, but why? What are we getting here? It was just a weird, lame play on words. And yeah, okay, it tied in the end, but it just didn't do anything for me. So
I think what it really is, you know, it's funny that you say that, because based on what you just said, I think the title is supposed to be, it's like, what is Deathstroke? Is Deathstroke the knight, meaning the hero, or is he the dragon, the villain? You know, because that's what's so interesting about a character like Deathstroke. He is the anti-hero, specifically in this film. He's not necessarily black and white in regards to where he falls, because he knows that he's a killer, but he's got a heart because he loves his family. He knows that what he's doing is not necessarily something that is on the side of the law, but he's doing this job because he's trying to provide for his family, and he's also trying to get rid of bad people. So that's where the Knights and the Dragon comes in. That's, if that answers your question.
Yeah, it does. When you say it out loud like that, and I kind of hone in on it, because if you think of also the passage that he read from the book, that is kind of alluded to, you know, that there is some yin to the yang, if you will. And so putting it in that perspective, I guess truly that's what this movie was all about, is kind of giving us the two different sides to Deathstroke, and just that inner battle that he has as to what side does he give into. And given the powers that he possesses, which, you know, we both don't know if those are true powers, I think it's something that we'd have to do some research on and go back and see how he obtained those, and if that that is true to a storyline for Deathstroke. But certainly it does give the appeal as to why the story developed the way that it did and why it ended on that note. So
Yeah, so
thanks for clarifying that.
Oh, you're welcome. You're welcome. That's what we're here for. So what would you actually rate this one for yourself?
For me, I'm going to go with a solid 3 stars because I really did enjoy the film. I thought that it lived up to its R rating. But just like you said, it's not one that I'll find myself running back to anytime soon. If it's something that we look to revisit, I think it would be because we're looking at Deathstroke as a whole and maybe comparing some different types of films that he's appeared in. But this is just one I can chalk up to say I watched it. I'm glad I did, but yeah.
So, in regards to DC animated films that you would want to go and take off the shelf and watch because it's just calling your name, I think it's right to say that when it comes between the two of us, one of those would definitely be Batman versus Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. There's just so much fandom and appeal towards that movie. But I gotta say, after I saw that movie, when it came to the original film library, I was like, oh my God, are they ever going to be able to top something as crazy as this? Enter Teen Titans Go versus Teen Titans. Oh my God. I think that when I first reviewed this movie on my channel, my exact words were, this movie was so bad, it was awesome.
And that's how I feel when I watch the cartoons too. I'm constantly watching Teen Titans Go, asking myself, what is wrong with me? Like, this is so bad, it's good, but yeah, here I am again.
Yeah,
but that's just the appeal that the kids have.
Yeah, I mean, what's so funny is I never watched Teen Titans Go because, and that was the other funny thing, because I had never watched Teen Titans. And I watched like an episode when it first aired back in 2003, and I mean Teen Titans. And the one thing that I have to admit, like, you're talking about someone who was watching everything from Batman the Animated Series all the way to Justice League and Justice League Unlimited. Those were amazing, amazing shows. And then Teen Titans comes around. Okay, it's cool that we're going to see the young heroes because, Teen Titans are a fan favorite in the world of DC Comics. People love George Perez's creation, to see Robin leading a team, and you get characters like Starfire and Cyborg and Beast Boy and Raven, and there are so many other famous heroes who are originally sidekicks like Aqualad, Wonder Girl, and Speedy. So, it's cool to know that there is a title in DC Comics that carries these characters on their own. But the one thing I didn't like about it when I was watching some of the episodes was it just felt so goofy to me. Like, it was like a little too lighthearted for me. And so, of course, when a show like Teen Titans Go comes on and you see these characters chipified into these dinky little things, and there's nothing in terms of crime fighting or anything that a DC character represents. It's basically just these characters being cute, funny, and stupid all at the same time. Like, how could that possibly appeal to somebody like me? But this show was so successful to the point. And you know something, Cammy? We may have to watch and review Teen Titans Go to the movies. We may have to. Because I
would love to.
Because that was the very first time since Batman Mask of the Phantasm that any DC animation creation made it to the big screen. That is a fact. It is crazy to believe that it took them that long, and it was crazy to believe that it was that franchise. But when I saw that these two versions of the Teen Titans were going to collide, I just said to myself, even though I've never watched either of these shows, I have a feeling something big is in this movie. And I was right. I laughed. It was fun. I thought that the jokes were brilliant. Some of the stuff that was so over the top, in a normal circumstance, you were saying, what the hell is this? But then you're watching this movie and you're like, oh my God, it fits so perfectly.
I watch a lot of cartoons that are way too young for me. I mean, I could go back to the debut of Blue's Clues and tell you I was watching that when I was in my 20s, you know? So for me to watch a cartoon that doesn't make a lot of sense makes total sense in my world. So that is why I've definitely gravitated to Teen Titans Go in the past. But this is one of those films, even as I was watching this to review with you today, I kept laughing and just having the best time with it and loving the little Easter eggs that would just kind of take you to different places in your mind, whether that was reminding you of the 90s or reminding you of a time that you were introduced to the Titans in a different world or a different version of them. But it was funny. I cannot recall laughing this much in a really long time. I mean, this was thoroughly enjoying from start to finish. And I think that's why cartoons like that just, they deserve that spotlight, because they take someone our age, in our age bracket, who thinks that they're beyond that, and really gives us a very special treat. And it's something that we can share, but also the beauty of it is we can incorporate it into more adult themed things that we're doing today. And that is the beauty of it. I think that is fantastic cinematography, writing, production, the whole 9 yards. This is just the perfect package.
Yeah.
This is going to be a new film favorite for me. It is definitely going to be one that I own. It will definitely be one that I revisit often. And another title I'm giving it after watching it, it's a new holiday favorite for me, because I really feel like it can have the holiday stamp on it.
Yeah, because Santa Claus is in it. That is actually kind of funny. But there are certain things that I have to say that really make this movie special. First of all, I love the fact that, you know, you've got the cast of Teen Titans Go is actually the cast of the original 2003 Teen Titans. So to know that the same people are voicing themselves in two different worlds is just absolutely brilliant. Just to see the 2003 Teen Titans again is a wonderful thing as well. And it's so funny to actually see just how over the top their Teen Titans Go personalities are compared to their Teen Titans personalities. When the team first meets each other and they have that battle royale, I love that single person that like holds up the sign, "You ruined my childhood." Because that is what a lot of people gave their first impressions of Teen Titans Go. You know, all these people who got older, who loved Teen Titans, are like, "Oh my God, you ruined my TV show. Like, why did you do this to me?" That's something that so many people can relate to. You know, a side-by-side team up that you never thought that would ever works so well in this movie, and that's the Teen Titans and the Teen Titans Go Trigon. Just those two characters, which are extremely opposite sides of a coin, to see them actually work together is hilarious.
Oh, that dialogue was so much fun, and I just enjoyed the fact that they kind of needed one another to kind of pull that plot line through. But it was hilarious. I laughed again, start to finish. I love the dynamic. I enjoyed every time we revisited those two on screen. But I can't say enough about this. And I think for me, part of that joy was the fact that you could take the Teen Titans and Teen Titans Go and put them together, and there were elements that were drawn from both of them. The goofiness of the younger version, and then the more developed Teen Titans, if you will. And then how, they took themselves so seriously in the beginning. And then by the end of the film, you see them kind of like, yeah, this works, you're goofy, especially with Robin, and just how he made it seem as though, well, no, dude, I'm still cooler than you and I'm still better looking than you, but you're cool too,
Yeah,
kind of thing. And I don't know, I really feel like this helps adults get through that stigma, because I've gotten the side eye many times when somebody will ask me, well, what have you been watching lately? And I'll be like, oh, I'm watching Bluey, or I'm watching Peppa Pig. And they're like, why do you do that? And I'm like, because it keeps you young and it helps you to have the comparison down the road, because I can guarantee you those childlike cartoons are going to be referenced in something that we are watching as adults. It's just the dynamic and the beauty of the writing style.
It's very funny that you mentioned Blue's Clues, because my wife apparently is a big Blue's Clues fan, and she was watching it when she found it when she was a teenager. And I think because again, I watched it when I was older because my sister was watching it, I believe, or maybe younger people, I don't know. But I think I understand why Blue's Clues resonates with so many people, and I think I understand why adults found it interesting. I think it's just because that, especially when you go back to Steve, the original host, he was the Fred Rogers of that generation. He just was an over energetic personality that welcomed you into his world and wanted you to be a part of it. That's what Fred Rogers did for a much different generation. I mean, he was able to be that kind of a figure to to kids who grew up in the 60s, to kids who were growing up in the 90s. So because of the fact that, unfortunately we lost Fred Rogers in 2003, to know that there was somebody who I'm pretty certain was influenced by Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood, that the people who made Blue's Clues and the people they chose to have Blue's Clues be a part of, I think that was what I get from it. And again, that's really what it is. It's about people taking things that truly worked from an older generation and trying to bring those over into a younger generation and just try and get them to love it just as much as older generations did. Sometimes they get it wrong, but sometimes they get it right too. And again, I don't think this is going to get me to watch any Teen Titans Go episodes, but again, it works. And I mean, I'm not surprised that the two Starfires got along with each other, because Starfire in the original is just over the top silly and adorable. But what I need to understand, because this is something that I've noticed not just in this specific movie, but in some of the other Teen Titans movies that we got in the DC library, why is it that all the stories have to make Raven one of the biggest driving forces of the film? Because Raven is a big driving force of this one too.
Yeah, she is. She's like the center of this one. And I think a lot of it has to do with her dichotomy. I think, because she's got kind of the two sides of the coin, also to her personality. She's got the inner demon, literally, and she's got the good side. And it's always like she's at odds with herself. There's some really great character traits that she has when her human side is trying to surface and she's trying to be a good person. But she has that kind of that dark personality, where she's just kind of like, here we go again, and that makes her very lovable and very likable. And I think that's why it's easy to focus on her, where you have the other characters, they're kind of almost one-dimensional, in that what you're getting with them, what their superpower is, what their driving force is. But with Raven, because she could virtually go either way and she could tap into either side, I think that makes her a little bit more interesting. And honestly, that really drove this entire plot for this whole movie. And I think it was beautifully executed. I can't see enough good things about this film.
Well, we obviously have to get to the best part, and it's the Titans on Infinite Earths scene. Oh my God! There was the jaw-dropping moment for me in that movie was when the Titans from the DC Universe films show up. That was like, I cannot believe they went there. And not just that, then they go and show the Hanna-Barbera versions of the Teen Titans, and then they show the comic book version of the Teen Titans. I'm like, wow, this was not just meant for Teen Titans Go and Teen Titans fans. This was just for people who love everything about the Teen Titans in this movie. That's what made this movie like that extra special treat.
And that is why I tell people to not judge a book by its cover and a movie by its introduction and title, because you don't know what you're getting. There are so many Easter eggs and so many gifts that are given through the world of animation. And if you loved something in your childhood, you are guaranteed to revisit it at some point in your adult world if you allow yourself to revisit these things, because they are always integrating and kind of not remaking per se, but like rejuvenating them in a way. Again, I go back to Blue's Clues. We're on the third generation of Blue's Clues, but that started when I was a freshman in high school, and here I am as a 40-year-old woman, and I can still enjoy an episode of Blue's Clues because the nature of it is wholesome. When you have something like Teen Titans, that virtually spans, and we're talking about now this, epic creation of bringing in all the different versions of them. It's giving something to everybody. So if you are a stick in the mud and you're like, oh, I'm too old for that, you're going to miss the beauty that that scene was. I mean, you even get the steampunk version that they were talking about. You get the mermaid version. And that's fun. I love it when animation does fun things like that. And so I just wish more people would give in to their kids' side and, just enjoy life, because there's very few things in this world that we can just sit down and just watch and enjoy with no expectations. It's just pure entertainment. And that scene was epic entertainment. I loved it from start to finish.
Yeah. And the scene that made me get another large laugh was at the very end of the movie where Darkseid shows up, just because of the fact that Weird Al voiced Darkseid. I was like, now, Weird Al Yankovic has voiced characters in DC before. There is a specific film in the library. It is Batman versus Robin, where he voices this psychopath called the Doll Maker, and Weird Al Yankovic terrified me with his voice talent. It was amazing. But to see him voice Darkseid, but be that typical Weird Al that I was like, once again, it's another one of those moments where you're watching this movie and you're like, oh my God, they actually just went there. And you love the fact that they did. And then the Teen Titans are just like, yeah, we're not going to pay any mind to you. To the point where they're like literally looking out the window like, yeah, there they go. They're doing that. We're just doing our thing. They go right back to where they were. That was really funny.
And I think it was Starfire that referenced him as Mr. Sen instead of his full name. But that's what made it cute, is that they had made a decision like, nope, this is it. This is all we've got for you guys today. We're not doing anything else. We're not going into another plot line. And then he shows up. Well, I've got something different. And then they're all there reading their comic books on the couch. Well, what's going on? What was that noise? And it's like, yes, this is exactly why I'm here. This is what I live for. Moments like this that are wholesome and heartfelt. And it's just a great tie-in to all of the things that we know, both dark and light,
Well, I will definitely say that I'm really hoping that you are, in fact, ready for round 2, because apparently next year this film is getting a sequel, and it is going to be Teen Titans Go. Yeah, it's going to be called Teen Titans Go versus DC Superhero Girls, which I'm very excited to see how they're going to do this. But the one thing that makes me mad about that is the fact that why did this come first when I really want a Batman versus Ninja Turtles 2? We need that movie to get a sequel too. I hope they make it, because, look, I'm anticipating Teen Titans Go versus DC Superhero Girls to be just as fun as this one, which is why I am totally giving this Teen Titans Go versus Teen Titans 4 stars out of 4. This is a perfect film if you just want to have a good old-fashioned fun time.
I could not agree more. If I could give it another star just for bonus points, I'll give it 5, because it's that good. I mean, it's one that you will definitely want to revisit. And I am very much looking forward to the DC Superhero Girls, because they're fun and they're animated in such a way that they're going to match Teen Titans Go perfectly. I think that's going to be a great lineup. I agree with you. I would love some more Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. Maybe we'll get it in the future. But for now, let's look forward to that, because I'm sure we'll be reviewing that in the future.
Oh, yes. It's definitely going to be a very interesting year next year when it comes to all the new films. But the last film that we're going to be discussing is one that I'm really curious to know your thoughts about. Now, I have to admit, you say what you will about me, because, yes, I didn't really come into this with a lot under my belt in terms of knowledge. We're going to be reviewing the film Injustice. Honestly, I wasn't sure if this was going to be part of the DC Universe Library or the DC Original Film Library, merely because of the fact that we got a preview of it in the special features of Batman: The Long Halloween Part 2. So normally when you see a preview for that, that means it's part of the DC Universe Library, but it wasn't. This is a completely on its own movie. This, of course, is based on the graphic novel Injustice Year One, which was written by Tom Taylor, and, of course, the ever-popular video game. Now, I haven't read Injustice yet. I don't think I'm ever going to be able to play the video game. I mean, I haven't even played the Arkham Asylum games, and yet I do enjoy watching Batman Assault on Arkham. But I gotta be honest with you, here's a story that has so much potential to be something truly great. And I don't know about you, Cammie, but oh my God, this may be one of the worst DC films that I have ever seen in my life. And I have seen some pretty bad ones in this library, whether it's the original movies or the universe films. But wow, I was very disappointed with Injustice on so many levels.
I went in with the understanding that you were not a fan of it, and so I had that kind of in the back of my mind, but I tried to keep an open mind regardless. I don't appreciate how the movie started. I thought that the voice of Superman was wrong from the start, which kind of made it a little awkward. It was almost a little too immature for me. And then that dynamic between him and Lois just felt very off from the start, but obviously that was the center of our plot point here. And then there's a lot going on in this film, so you really just have to stop everything that you're doing and make sure that you're paying attention, because you're going to miss a beat and you're going to miss a lot. So not one of my favorites, but I didn't dislike it, I think, as much as you did. I think that in the end, my biggest disappointment was just what they ended up doing with Superman. I just thought that was kind of weak in terms of the story, because, you know, I think that we kind of have that understanding. We've seen it many times with Superman, where he has this vision of perfection, that the Earth can be perfect, its people can be perfect, and if you just tweak this and switch that through this great butterfly effect, there will be this perfect world. There was a lot of messiness between him and Wonder Woman in this film, though. I didn't quite understand like adding some of the characters like Joker and Harley, but Harley drove the plot in the middle with Green Arrow. So again, there's a lot going on. It's not the best film, but I didn't end up hating it.
Well, I see where you're coming from, and I can go into a little bit more of an understanding as to why I felt the way I felt. First of all, I was very let down because there's so much potential and you really could make a good movie out of this. I think this movie might have been rushed. And the reason why I say that is because I don't think we even knew that this movie was even coming out this year. I mean, I knew pretty much towards the third, possibly even the fourth quarter of 2021 that it was coming, but I thought we were getting it next year. I didn't know we were getting it this year. So to me, the movie felt very incomplete. The characters felt very static to me. I thought the voice choices for every single one of these characters was absolutely dreadful. Absolutely agree with you on your attitude about Superman. The fact that he acts that way, I'm like, you'd expect him to handle pregnancy in a much more mature way and not something that, dare I say, it looks like it came out of Teen Titans Go. Don't mean to knock Teen Titans Go in this, but that's basically where I'm getting here. The fact that this movie has so much darkness, so much violence, I mean, the way that Superman kills Joker and goes into the realm of being a overall dictator, you know, that is something that comes straight out of the comic books. We know that this is the trigger. And that's one of the few things that I actually think is positive about this movie. I love Joker's motivation for doing what he did to Superman, because he basically is asked by Batman, why did you do it, Joker? He goes, because it's so darn easy to get under Superman's skin. With you, it's just a runaround. I needed a quick fix. So that's what makes the Joker the bastard that he is. You know, he's that evil. He's willing to kill a loved one of Superman because he knows that he can do it, and he knows it's going to set Superman off. And that's really what I think Joker's motivation was in this movie, even though it was short-lived. His goal here was to turn the world towards chaos, because you hit Superman that hard, you're gonna get that chaos. And even though it's more of a structured, policing, it's still chaos, because the human race and all the DC superheroes are like, how could Superman go down this road? Like, really? Could this have done this to him? That's where I think the movie / the story gets it right in terms of the plot, but they just didn't execute it well.
Yeah, maybe that's a better way to put it, because I don't feel that the Joker and Harley were out of place. I just felt like it was, and again, going back to the term you just used, rushed, So we see Joker and Harley come in, and just as quickly as he was there, he was gone. I do feel that the conversation he has with Batman in terms of the why was very well executed. The dialogue was definitely there, and that kill was epic. I was not expecting that. That was actually a huge surprise for me. I was like, whoa, did Superman just do what I think he did? And does that mean we're done with the Joker? Like, this is like over for him? He's dead, right?
Yeah.
So that was very well done. And then in terms of the violence or the chaos, I guess is probably a better way to state it, that ensues. I mean, Metropolis is essentially destroyed. And then, of course, you do have the loss of Lois and the child and all of these things. So there's a lot of dark heaviness. But with that should come this kind of somber ambiance, and I don't think we ever get that from the film.
You don't get that.
A loss for Lois. You don't get that for the child, and so it kind of segues you back to that immaturity that you get with Superman in the beginning of the film, because you never get the heaviness or the true feeling of the darkness. Even at its darkest moments in this film, I don't feel that you get that from the film. It still seems very light and airy, and I don't know, it never fully executed for me what I think maybe that it should do. And I also want to preface by saying I have not read Injustice year 1 or 2, so I don't have any knowledge of the comic whatsoever, but I have thumbed through it in the bookstore, and so I do know that it does give me Kingdom Come vibes, so it does look very dark. I would assume that this film would do the same, but I never felt that from the film at all.
Just so you know, because I actually did my own research on this as well, because I actually only thought at the beginning that Injustice was a video game. I did not know that it was a comic book. Ironically, Tom Taylor is the person who wrote it, and he's currently writing a lot of good things. He's writing Dark Knights of Steel. He's writing the controversial Superman Son of Kal-El book right now, so he's doing a lot of work. Injustice was pretty much like the story that put him on the map. There's 5 years of this stuff. But according to Andy, who is someone who we in this community and on this channel truly trust, he said, just read year 1. He says, that's the one that you need to read. Don't worry about the others. And that's the other thing. There's a ton of stuff that is left on the table in regards to this story, because you would expect to see more drama in regards to the line being drawn in the sand when Superman starts taking his courses of action. And yet you see a quick scene where Aquaman says, I'm just gone. I'm not going to be part of the Justice League anymore. Then you got a character like Huntress, who's just animated in this movie but doesn't even say a word. So it's like, why is she even in this movie at all? Shazam only has one line. Even Wonder Woman is totally underused. Why do we need that Green Arrow and Harley dynamic? I thought that Harley Quinn was so damn annoying in this movie. I hated her in this movie. There was no reason for her to be in this movie as far as the role that she was in. And that whole story with Nightwing was so, it didn't fit. This whole Deadwing thing, it didn't fit.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned that, because that did not resonate well with me at all. What is Deadwing? Like, really? There's nothing better you could come up with than to call him Deadwing?
Yeah, it was, yeah.
Yes, I don't know. It was messy. It was weird. And then him kind of integrating. I don't know. I thought it was strange. It was messy. I didn't think Harley was annoying. I actually enjoyed her in this movie because there's a movie that she stars in. It's a Batman film, and I can't for the life of me think of what it is. But she has a scene in that movie where she's very much like she is throughout the entirety of this film. And so I guess that just, kind of sparked my memory banks a little bit. So I didn't find her annoying. I found her comedy refreshing. But given the context of the film, it probably came across a lot more annoying because, again, you didn't get the heaviness or the darkness ever. It just felt a little too light and airy throughout the film. And so when you're taking these hard-hitting subjects and losses and plot lines, and you never get to really grieve or feel that, it kind of just doesn't set well on the palate, and you just feel like annoyed. I mean, that's a good way to put it. Throughout the film, you're just like, again with this crap,
Yeah.
There was a really interesting point in the film though where Superman is dealing with like a meso robot, and
Yeah,
that
Amazo.
robot kind of Amazo, okay, that's what his name is, Amazo, where he's dealing with the robot, and the robot that looks at him, and in a computer-like way, as he's kind of analyzing the situation, has a clear perfection or a clear understanding of the perfection that is referenced several times throughout this film, that it cannot be achieved. And to get that far into the movie, to kind of get to the crux of why we're here, like really we got this far for us to realize perfection cannot be achieved. That, even as amazing and epic as that moment was, it fell really flat in the film because you just have all this light and airy stuff going on in the background.
Yeah.
And then you take it from that point, and then they try to kind of like shove everything in terms of the punishment of Superman into a very short period of time. And it's like, I don't know, I felt rushed, I felt cheated, I felt kind of just underwhelmed. That was a really good way to put it for me. I was very underwhelmed with this film.
Yeah, because there's a couple of other things that I definitely want to talk about. I mean, we did actually mention it in just a previous video where they're having that big battle in Arkham Asylum, and then all of a sudden they reference Calendar Man. They're like, or this guy, whoever he is. You see, again, it's things like that that made me just despise this movie so much, because I'm like, why are you giving me jokes? Like, this was a time where DC was really trying to turn it into a Marvel movie. Like, like they purposely tried to force in jokes. This movie is based on material that is extremely, extremely brash and in your face and dark. The fact that they were trying to throw jokes out there, I mean, like, let me talk about a very interesting element of this movie. Plastic Man. Now, Plastic Man is a character that goes way back to my childhood and most likely yours. I wouldn't be surprised if you watched the Plastic Man comedy adventure show when you were a kid. That was, I didn't even know that Plastic Man was a DC comic character at that time.
I didn't know. That was a surprise to me. I was familiar with the character, but had no idea he ran in the DC family.
But Plastic Man is a character that, you were waiting for him to show up in this grand DC animated world. I mean, I still remember in Justice League, Plastic Man is referenced, but you never see him, but you do get Elongated Man. And you do actually see Plastic Man take a big role in a Batman cartoon with Batman Brave and the Bold. That's when I think it was just an issue with the rights. So that's where he first showed up. And Plastic Man does make a quick appearance, not a speaking role in Young Justice, to the point where Shazam just laughs because he thinks he's a funny guy. But I'm like, you make Plastic Man a driving force in Injustice? I'm like, how? This is supposed to be a very dark movie, and you throw the comedy in here. Like, again, love that they wanted to use Plastic Man in any shape or form, but no, he does not belong here.
Yeah, again, it just takes the heaviness and the darkness of this film, and it just lightens it to a point where you get disappointed. I could not get over looking at Plastic Man's face. The whole film, every time he would make an appearance, all I would see would be Johnny Knoxville and be like, dude, you are such a jackass. I mean, there was just, I don't know, it got to a point. I mean, you say that Harley was annoying for you. Plastic Man was definitely annoying for me. But again, no fault to him that he did what the writers, I guess, intended for him to do, is to be this kind of weird comedic relief, but it didn't work. It's like, is this supposed to be a dark, heavy movie, or is this supposed to be funny? Whatever you're doing here, it's not working, because it's like the whole movie was fighting with each other the entire time for screen time.
And it's so funny because you take a look at that final way to try and get Superman to finally realize that what he's doing is not the right thing. You literally bring in the concept of the multiverse, and you bring in Earth 1 Superman. I mean, Teen Titans Go versus Teen Titans use the multiverse capability to their advantage in such a great way, and Injustice couldn't even do that right.
No, it was like they opened the refrigerator door and Lois Lane walked out. It was just, it was awful. I wasn't impressed with any facet of this film. I don't think that it's memorable, and I really hope that somebody decides to redo this and give it the platform that it deserves, because I feel like once I read the comic book, which I fully intend to do, it's definitely got me interested in doing that. But I feel that once I do that, I'm going to feel even worse about this film. So I'm just hoping that somebody somewhere along the line in the DC world decides to give this another chance and just completely reboots it and does something different with it.
Yeah, because I think what the real funny thing is, and I really am using this term to the way it's supposed to be, is the fact that there is so much death in this movie. So many characters are killed, and yet you feel nothing for them, and sometimes you completely even forget that all these characters were even killed in the first place, just because of how poorly executed this film was. And it's so funny. So now that we've had this specific conversation, do you feel your mind changing a little bit in regards to this?
Yeah, I do.
That was not my intention, by the way. I did not want that to be the eventual outcome of this video and discussion, Gabby. I just want to make that clear.
No, and that's fine. And I think that's the beauty of these conversations, because I think that sometimes you will kind of give a little bit of credit to something, just hoping to pull something out of your hat, and want, I guess, in a way, your audience to want to take it in for themselves and watch it and experience it. I definitely say everybody should watch this for themselves either way. But now having this conversation with you and looking at things from a different perspective, and just kind of like you're saying, there's so many moments that could have been capitalized on. That scene in Arkham Asylum, the scene at the table where you have the Justice League basically sitting there deciding the fate of the future of Superman and Earth. Even the dichotomy of bringing in Earth 1, 2, and Earth 22, all in that scene with Lois Lane where she comes through the portal. There was so much you could have capitalized on in this film, and nothing went anywhere. It was just like, oh, let's write this. It was like a 10, 11, and 12-year-old sat there and wrote the script for this and said, hey, wouldn't it be cool if this happened? And that's Injustice.
Yeah, I really wonder what Tom Taylor feels about this. You know, love him or hate him, I'm really curious how he feels about this film adaptation. And again, the animation is poor. The voice acting is poor. I mean, I'm just very glad that eventually we're going to do a Who Wore It Best episode, and that Andy is going to be in a separate room, because when he sees this movie, he is going to want to punch a baby. I am not kidding. He is going to be furious when he sees this movie, because he loves this book.
Well, I honestly can't wait to do that episode, because at which point I'll have read it, and then I'll probably hate this movie more. I mean, not that I came in hating it, period. I was like, yeah, it was okay. But now I could probably say it lies very low for me, just because of the fact that so many things were highlighted. And when you really just kind of take it like cookie dough and spread it out on the table, a lot of things were introduced, a lot of characters were introduced, a lot of plot points were introduced, but nothing was given its proper time, exposure, or closure. And so therefore you just had a lot of elements of darkness and heaviness and introduction that just fell flat and didn't do anything. So for
Yeah.
me, that's just, it's a poor execution across the board.
I think that what's really upsetting to me is that there are very few DC animated films, even ones that are not even part of this library. There are very few that I will actually say I really don't like this movie. Like, if I'm going to go with some of them that I really don't like, those are movies like Batman, Enter the Batwoman, or Batman Sub-Zero, or Superman Brainiac Attacks. Those are movies that I feel never really got that true tender love and care that these DC films deserve. But oh my goodness, you know, you'd expect in this library, you would expect some effort put into this movie. I mean, I definitely say that this movie would get 1 star out of 4 for me, just because there were just a few things in there, very, very few, that prevented it from getting a 0. But wow, it basically makes me want to read the source material, because I'd like to see, just my attitude right now is, exactly how bad did they get this? That's what I want to find out now. I need to know just how bad did they get this film.
Well, after having the conversation, I was also looking over the notes that I made while watching the movie. And one of the inscriptions that I made here was, it was really hard to keep track of all the characters because there was just so many characters thrown into scenes and everything. So when you take that thought plus the layout that we kind of looking over the film in terms of introduction and specific scenes, yeah, I was going to come in a little bit higher, but I'll have to agree with you. I'm just going to land at 1 star, and eventually we'll revisit this after we read the source material. And I think that's definitely the first question that we should answer is, how bad was this executed?
Yeah, I have a feeling that's going to be our 2022 season premiere of Who Wore It Best. You, me, and Andy are going to read this book, and we're going to watch this movie, and we may have the best show ever, but we'll see how that goes.
Let's do it.
Yeah, but let me just say that before we go, because that's basically wrapping up the final episode of 2021 over here on the DC Animated Live Show. Just want to give you all a very interesting tease. We're looking forward to a very good season in 2022, because we're going to go in a couple of different directions. We're going to not only take a look at the new additions to the DC Animated Film Library that are coming out in 2022, but we're definitely going to revisit some films. We're going to definitely incorporate some of these films into Who Wore It Best with some of their comic book counterparts. We're definitely going to take a look at some themes in regards to some of these films and watch them and review them side by side. But we're also going to finally start incorporating the television shows, because one of the few things that we have to remind ourselves of, that next year is the 30th anniversary of Batman the Animated Series, and we definitely want to make sure that we tackle that television show and we discuss it. But Cammie, after this conversation, yes, I am definitely going to make sure that I make some effort to watch Teen Titans Go to the Movies, because I think we need to review that movie.
I 100% agree with you. I actually saw it in the lineup when I was going to discover this movie. So I was like, hey, that looks like a fun one. So you know I'm on board.
Sounds great. And I'll let you know how things go in regards to Teen Titans, because of the fact that I actually am starting to watch it. I'm in the middle of the 2nd season right now. Honestly, I'm finding myself pushing The Sopranos a little bit forward to the side every single day, because I'm constantly watching more Teen Titans episodes. So I'm in season 3 of The Sopranos right now. That just shows you how little of it I've been watching. But Teen Titans, I'm just like going boom, boom, boom. I'm just having a good time. And because of the fact that I have HBO Max, maybe I should take a look at some of the other DC shows I haven't watched yet. Maybe I should watch The Batman. Maybe I should watch The Zeta Project. Maybe I should watch Batman Brave and the Bold. There's so many other DC shows that I give to the credit of the DC animation world and the Bruce Timm perfectionism that he is, but I still have yet to truly complete my own journey, because right now I'm still very satisfied with where I am. But I kind of felt that Teen Titans was one of those shows that I was going to have to watch eventually, just because there's such a fandom for it. But I would highly recommend for you to start watching Young Justice, because that's a fantastic show.
Yeah, that's one that you've been mentioning to me quite a lot. So it's one that I do need to tackle. I think I'm going to enjoy that one.
Yeah, I think we may end up having to review that by the season. I'm not sure yet. But anyway, everybody, thank you so much for watching another great episode of the DC Animated Live Show. Once again, we want to wish you a happy and safe new year, just like we did in the previous video that you probably just watched over on Who Wore It Best. And we will see you in the next one.